Hey friends, welcome back to the whiteboard. I'm Blaine from Applied Leadership Partners, and today we're going to talk about getting back together. That's right. As we record this in May of 2021, organizations and teams are finally starting to get back together around the country. We're getting to a place where there's a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're thinking seriously about how can we get folks back in the office? How can we get our teams back together? How can we do that first retreat or offsite? How can we get our folks back out on the street and in front of clients and potential customers? And these are challenging things to think through. It's exciting for a lot of us. I know Brandon and I are pumped to be able to get back out on the road and be in the same room as some clients. We've got one coming up next week with a small group of leaders out in Colorado that we're really excited about. But this is rife with complications, and there's a lot to think about in terms of doing this right. And so that's why we want to talk about that today. And while there's no obvious precedent that we can look back on for how to do this, there are some clues that we can find if we think about how the military has done this over the past, forever, right? There's a term we use in the military called redeployment. And essentially all that means is coming home from war or returning back after a deployment. And the military takes this really seriously right now after nearly 2 decades of warfare. There's been plenty to learn in this department. And I'll tell you, just on a personal level, I have screwed this up myself at least once pretty bad, maybe twice. I think Brandon would tell you the same. So we've learned a lot and experienced this personally ourselves. But I think there are some lessons, some really good things that we've learned that we can pull from in thinking about how we guide teams in coming back together now in 2021 in a post-pandemic world. And this is really important stuff to think about because we're not going back to normal. There's no such thing. It doesn't work like that. When we go through major events like this and as time passes, things change. That's just the way it works. You've changed, your teammates have changed, our circumstances, the whole world has changed. And so this isn't simply about kind of getting back to normal. But we'd also encourage you to think about what can you take from before and use wisely now? Because it's also not about starting over, right? It's not like COVID happened, pandemic, everything has changed, we got to start all the way over. That's probably not a great approach either. I'm sure there's plenty of things that you've done over the past that are successful, that can be successful again, that you want to build on. So the first thing we would encourage you to do is think about taking a bit more of a blended approach, using some good first principle thinking, getting down to the nitty-gritty on what problems you really need to solve, what things do you need to do to be successful. Take what worked before and what you know, build on that with what you learned during the pandemic and what we think the world's going to look like going forward. And let's build a solution that works for the world that we're actually in now. Remembering a leader's first job is to see the world as it is, right? And so how can we do this? Well, every organization is going to be a little bit different tactically, operationally, but we have a few principles, a few kind of guideposts here that we think will be helpful for you as you consider how to bring your team back together and how to get back out there in front of clients again. So when we think about doing redeployment well, the first thing we want to think about is this. The same circumstances do not equal the same experience. And what I mean by that is this. 100 people could go through a scenario that looks essentially the same, and they could have 100 different experiences. Over this past year, everyone has had their own unique challenges, their own unique experiences. They have felt this and dealt with this in their own way. And so while one of your sales reps may have had a very similar looking circumstance to another, that doesn't mean that they shared the same experience as they went through this. So you really want to be mindful about the unique aspects of all of your people. And as you're bringing them back together, you can't treat them all uniformly. We need to understand that as similar as this may have looked, it probably was felt quite differently across your entire crew. The next thing we want to keep in mind here is that we can have no unspoken expectations. As we start to roll things back out and we start to bring people together, some people are really excited, some people are really apprehensive, and there's everything in between. So as a leader, you've got to share with your folks what's on your mind. You got to share your vision of success, how you see this going, and you've got to provide the opportunity for other people to do the same. Because the number one thing that will absolutely destroy a redeployment effort is if we have unspoken expectations. Because if they're unspoken, they're likely to go unmet, and then we can really start to spiral. I have plenty to say on that, but I'll spare you the gory details from my personal life. All right, the next one, redeployment is a process. It's not an event, right? So you need to plan for this. You need to think about how you're going to do this, and you need to understand that you're probably going to take somewhat of a phased approach. It's not going to be like we're going to flip the light switch back on, or pull the lever, and we're going to be kind of going back to normal. I mean, you guys know that. We need to really respect the process, plan accordingly, put something in place that your people can see and be aware of, and have some transparency there, and understand that this is going to happen over time, and it's not going to be something that can happen instantaneously. And finally, kind of the same area, don't rush it. Many of us are really eager to get back going and get things back to more like the way they were. That's totally understandable. As I said, Brandon and I feel very much the same way, but you're gonna hit some bumps in the road. You're gonna hit some snags. Some things are gonna go less than perfect, to say the least. And so just understand that, have that expectation going in, give your people some grace, give yourself some grace, and understand that, hey, we're gonna do the best we can. We're gonna communicate clearly. We're gonna share our expectations. We're gonna respect people's unique experiences. And this thing's gonna take some time. All right, we hope you guys find that helpful. This is a really important topic right now. If we can be of help, please let us know.